But I would see agents who are really successful financially and know they don't even know what they're doing. Right. They're not taking care of their clients. They're bad agents. I'm a good agent and I'm not financially successful. So I realized I was quitting. It's something I'm good at. And literally I made a U-turn on Union Road. And
if you're a real estate agent in Buffalo, New York, there is a very little chance that you don't know my next guest. I was able to join the amazing Joe Sorrentino JR in his office the other day and have a great conversation covering everything from music and creativity to how he got started in real estate, and then some of his beliefs on what it takes to be a successful agent in 2023 and going into 2024 and beyond. He co-hosts the Let's Go Buffalo podcast with Kevin McMullen, who is also a fantastic agent here in Buffalo, and they interview all sorts of people and business leaders here in Buffalo, and I highly recommend you check that out here on YouTube or on their Instagram, and I'll link all that in the show notes below. If you do enjoy the conversation, I would love it if you hit the like button below and subscribe for more conversations with top realtors here in Buffalo.
So before my father got into real estate in 1991, but from the time he was 16, he was a professional woodwinds player. He played saxophone. And my grandfather was a professional woodwinds player as well. But my dad played every woodwind, like every type of saxophone, alto, soprano, tenor. He played clarinet. He played, I think, is it a baritone clarinet or bass clarinet, the big one? He played flute. And like before I was born, like he literally traveled all over the country. He played in Vegas with Lou Rawls. He played with Tony Bennett. Like my dad is a musician. But then the jazz scene like died in Buffalo. So he went from playing in Vegas to like, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s, he's getting into real estate. Real estate's blowing up for him. And then it's like, oh, I'm not available Saturday. I got to go play like a wedding. Like it was just such a drop off for him. So music was in my blood and I wanted to play saxophone like my dad. And he got me into Buddy Rich and like the great drummers. So I wanted to play drums and I want to play saxophone. So you write down what instruments you want to play. I wrote down drums, saxophone. They're like, okay, great. Here's a clarinet. And that killed it for me.
Right. Yeah.
So my daughter, she loves music. She's 3 years old, and she just loves banging on shit. And so she's asked Santa Claus for a drum set.
Nice.
And I think he's coming through with it.
Really? Nice.
But when I was at Guitar Center, I was asking them about lessons and stuff. Like I need to pursue that. Like there's a void that needs to be filled with music. There's just something about just dabbling with it. Like I need to like learn the language of music.
Yeah.
So that's my music story. That's cool. You play guitar.
Yeah, I used to play. It was like my thing. I went to music recording school for like one semester and ended up dropping out because my thing is I wanted to record music. I want to have a band come in, put an awesome album together, but then they were drilling in theory so hard to me, and I'm all ear taught. I don't know how to read music. I would sit next to have my CD player, listening to Judas Priest, and be like, okay, that's the note. I can. Yeah, so like anytime someone could play something to me, I'm like, give me a few times, I'll figure it out, and I can still do it pretty well. Like I'll hear a song on TV, and I'm like, I'll go to my wife, I'm like, I think I can figure that out. And because I have ADHD, I have to go figure it out. So I come out with the guitar and I'm like,
is that an ADD thing? Because
you just get like these
I have a similar
like hyperfixation on something. Like I have to go do this, or because that's all I can think about.
I have a similar thing I have a Yamaha keyboard. Never learned how to play it, but I will get fixated and go figure out how, or even watch YouTube or whatever, and figure out how to play. And I'll forget it because I won't stick with it. But it'll hit me, and I have to figure out how to play that.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time. Like we'll watch like School of Rock. I'm like, I think I know that. I think I can figure that out. But they had me doing like music, bass lessons, piano lessons, singing lessons. And I was like, guys, I don't want to do this. I see the value in knowing music theory, but I want someone to. If someone needs a suggestion on something, I'm gonna say, play it like this. Why don't we try something like this, as opposed to like make that a suspended diminished fourth or whatever the chords are. And I ended up dropping out, but I still I can't get rid of my instruments. I still have them. I just bought a new guitar to put in my office because it's hyperfixated. I was like, I want to play guitar again because my favorite band came out with a tab book and I can read tab.
Who's your favorite band?
Bayside. They're a pop punk band from like 2000s and kind of emo, I guess. But I tried to learn like 2 of their songs. I was like, okay, the guitar just looks cool. So I'll just keep it here. But But yeah, that's cool. I think music is something that everybody should at least have the ability to try. But I think forcing it into like you're gonna play recorder, and that's it.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if maybe it's changed now in the school systems. It probably has, but I just feel like even if you have like 80% saxophone, like who cares if it doesn't sound great overall as a band? Like if someone has an interest, a child has an interest in a creative thing, like you got to push them to that because your creative muscle is something that you will lose it. You'll lose creativity if you don't work it. Like from doing this shit, like you're constantly having to be creative, but when you don't do that, like do you have kids?
Do not.
Like you find out when you're playing with a 3-year-old who has an imagination, and you can't even believe, like my kid the other day, she picks up and she has some severe like speech delays, and so she'll surprise you. Like she has a fake phone and she picked up and she's ordering Chinese food on the phone. And I'm like, what? Like, and then we're playing, like she wants to pretend we're driving to go get it. Like, where does something like that even come from? It's so interesting. But as a parent, you're sitting there and you're like, sometimes you don't know, like, okay, she wants to play. I don't even know where to begin. Like my imagination, I don't even know where to start because it becomes suppressed from like the real world. And if you're not exercising that muscle.
Yeah, you end up just with a car like this guy drives. It's like it's like this is boring and stupid.
Like, all right, here's our guy. He's going to work for the day.
Now he's gonna sit there for 8 hours while we're gonna watch him sit there at his desk.
So yeah, you have to use this creative muscle. I think music's so important.
Yeah, I think in general, having a creative outlet that isn't related to anything you do helps you in the things you do, because it just creates different pathways, I think, in the brain of like just having a creative mind of solving problems and things like that.
I also think, especially for people like us who have ADD or ADHD, whatever it is, I can't focus on shit.
Yeah.
It forces you, like you can't learn a song and not be focused.
Right.
So it forces you to be hyper-focused on something. So then when you come back to your job, you're like refreshed. You took a break. Otherwise, I don't know if it's the same with you, but like with real estate, with me, you're never done with your job. There's always something you could be doing.
Oh, yeah.
So if you don't take those mental breaks and learn how to detach, it can completely consume you. There's always something you can be doing. Like, oh shit, I made this sale. I got to follow up with marketing on this. I got to follow up with this client. I need new business. I need to post on social media. There's just always something to be doing, and it can overtake your thoughts. So having a creative outlet to just focus on something else is so important.
Yeah, I find it's hard too when that thing that you do for your job is something you enjoy. Because I'm like, even if I'm not doing this for my work, I'm probably gonna have a camera in my hand of something or some sort. So I've forced myself either with music, or I've recently started DJing as like a little side hobby that is detached from a camera. I have had to tell myself, don't record what you're doing. Don't like. I posted it once on social just to show like, hey, it's important to have these hobbies. But yeah, it's nice. It's really good to have a creative hobby, but it has nothing to do with what you normally do, because then you can come back refreshed from it.
Yeah, that's so important.
Or even like sports. I think something like that is a good thing too.
I went through when I got into real estate, because I worked every Sunday doing open houses, I got out of watching football, and now I hardly ever work Sundays, and I got back into football several years ago, and it made me realize, from not following sports, following again, like, now I see why people are really into this. Like, it's such a nice break from reality.
Yeah. So I was never into like football and like actual like traditional sport. I played paintball all through high school. That was like my thing. But moving to Buffalo, I was like, I should probably follow the Bills just so I can at least talk to people about it, and not have, when I worked at an office job, like I could at least be in the conversation. Got sucked in. Last season, I was like, I'm never watching these guys again. I was like, these guys are very technically losers. They had never won the Super Bowl. And I was like, they just waste my time. But here I'm watching every Sunday, because I'm like, they have that way of just like, they can just pull you in because they're like just good enough, make it exciting. They're very exciting. But sometimes I'm like last season I was like, I can't watch this anymore. It's just I could have been doing work, which is, it's probably good to have that thing that does suck you away from work.
It is interesting, the emotional attachment that you get with. I find myself after a Bills loss just not in the right state of mind the next day. And then I'm realizing, like, why is this happening? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, none of those guys have anything to do with me.
Right.
That really doesn't affect my life. But it's like, I want so bad, because the thing with sports, it's so parallel to, like, it's relatable to anything in life, especially with the Bills or any team sport. Like, it's interesting to watch. Like, everything has to come together for it to work perfectly, and that's similar to running a business too. So you just rooting so hard for them. But
Yeah, and I think too, obviously we live in the city where they play, and I think the nation's opinion of our city, so we want that to be good. And when people are like, for some reason, the Bills are like what Buffalo is, and it's like when the Bills do great, people love them, but then people always like, oh, Buffalo sucks because the Bills suck. It's like, you haven't even been here. But yeah, there's definitely. I mean, I was coming up with video ideas the other day, and I was like, what can we learn from the Bills, and how can we apply it to business? And one thing is like being there, and just standing at the end of the game and not giving up halfway through or at the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally just being there, and when everybody else has given up, you're able to succeed just by almost default, by like the other team gets a penalty and now you just won.
Right.
Like, sometimes you just got to have the fortitude just to be around and just keep doing the things that you should be doing, and having almost like blind faith that you're gonna win.
I think too, specifically with the Bills, with the leadership of the Bills, with our coach and with Josh Allen, they are the type of people that take responsibility. Mm-hmm. They don't ever point fingers when they lose. It's on them. And to me, that's of all the Bills teams in the past, I love this Bills team the most because of that. Mm-hmm. They're not blaming the refs when they lose.
Right.
They're always looking at themselves like, what could I have done better? And that, I think, is like one of the most important things with business, where it is very parallel. I'm a big fight fan.
Okay.
And are you familiar with Floyd Mayweather?
Yes. Yeah.
Probably the best boxer of our generation. One of the interesting things about Floyd that most people don't know is he never watched or studied tape of his opponents. His coaches did, and they would give him some pointers, but he never focused on what his opponents were doing. And he only focused on what he was going to do. And I think that is such a good lesson for people in business, especially with social media. People are so concerned and get anxiety about what other people are doing, especially in real estate. Mm-hmm. People see someone posting all these just sold things, and they maybe, feel bad and like, well, I didn't sell that many. And it's all just noise. The thing with Mayweather that was amazing is he focused on his strengths. And what would happen when he fought was people focused so much on him when they were fighting him that if someone's knows what they're good at and they've been doing it their whole life, like a specific thing, and you're going to get prepared in 3 months to beat them at that specific thing, you're not going to be able to do that. You need to focus on what you're good at.
Yeah.
And you would see it happen in the ring. Floyd Mayweather was a great counterpuncher. And people don't understand, he didn't run from people. He stood flat-footed a lot, and he stood right in front of you. And you couldn't hit him, and he would counter you. So what would happen, you would see there'd be a point in time, he would usually lose early rounds in the fight. And he would counter people so much and figure them out that then there'd be a moment where you'd see his opponents standing there thinking, trying to anticipate when is he going to counter. And right there you knew the fight's over.
Yeah.
Because now they're worried about what he's doing, and he's not even thinking about it. He's on autopilot doing what he's been doing since he was 5 years old. Yeah. And I think that's always such a great lesson in business. Like, dude, whatever it is, like if you're really good at cold calling, or if you're really just good at, one-on-one meetings with people, if you're really good at paperwork, whatever, like if you have something you're really good at, go all in with that, and don't worry about that person's so good at videos, and you stress yourself out that maybe you're not as good as that or something, and people just get in their own heads and they prevent themselves from just being the best version of themselves as they can.
I think too, a lot of times I want to just kind of wrap this part up, is we'll look at other people doing something better than us, and we'll get discouraged rather than inspired. Like, wow.
Yes.
And I used to do it too. I see another video agency have an awesome job. I'm like, man, why isn't that me? Then I really think, well, why isn't that me? Like, how can I actually realize that they're actually doing something that I'm not, and what can I learn from it?
Yes.
And not let it consume me as like, oh, I suck. It's like, I can get better. For me, it's like, oh, I can, they're almost proving that I can do something. And it's like, that's
Yes.
inspiring. So yeah, competition. I think once you start switching from competition to collaboration and like, what can I actually learn instead of just hating on things?
I think that's a deeper issue with people though, where that comes from having a more positive outlook and also being comfortable with yourself. When you're super insecure, you look at other people doing something good and think it has something to do with you, and it doesn't.
Right.
Versus being happy for someone, like, wow, that's definitely something in real estate that I had to change my mindset for that. We're never going to be able to start this officially. I'm going to just keep...
I guess to start things off, because I mean, I can't imagine anybody watching this won't know who you are, but I haven't met you. This is the first time meeting you. Can you maybe give me like a quick rundown of like what you do and kind of what got you to where you are now with like your own team and things like that?
I'm a real estate agent, and I grew up in real estate. My father became an agent when I was about 6 years old. I'm 38 years old now, so I've been around residential real estate my entire life. And I grew up always thinking, I'm never going to do that. That job sucks. My dad's working all the time. I don't want to do that. And like a lot of businesses, it just kind of fell into place. I was a terrible student. Didn't have any path to success in any way. Didn't know what I was good at. And I got my real estate license thinking, I'll just work for my dad. And magically, my dream job will fall in my lap one day. So I got into it really with no intention of sticking around or being successful at it. I just thought, well, I'll just work for my dad, so he has to hire me. And yeah, then fast forward, I put a lot of weight on my shoulders when it comes to being responsible for other people. So when 23-year-old kid is trying to buy his first house, that's the biggest investment of his life. I really give a shit about making sure that they make a good investment for themselves. And so ultimately what happened was years of struggling financially, but giving a shit about my clients. And, you know, like I have a story that I always think about early in my career when, like, you know, I was financially failing really, but I always wanted to do the best job I could for people. And I remember getting a call from a client. It's like 8:00 at night. My wife and I are in Target, and his attorney never told me that they were closing the next day. So he calls me and he's like, you know, we're closing tomorrow. And I had to drop everything and literally, like, I don't even know how the car situation worked out. I left my wife at Target and like did a final walkthrough at the last second because like he needed to get in there. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, that stuff, I'll see that happen nowadays, and I'll see that, like, I don't even know if I would drop everything. I mean, I might be like, fuck, you're not doing a final walkthrough now. But at that time, like, the pressure of like, he's closing tomorrow, I have to take care of him. And just knowing how little deals I was doing at that time, there was just such a tremendous pressure to like do right by people. Mm-hmm. And so years of doing that, but not putting in the effort to be extremely successful, because I just thought, because everyone keeps telling you, you should love what you do. And I just thought, like, well, my passion job will show up one day. And I think it was Mark Cuban, someone said at one time, if you really put a lot of effort in and get really good at something, you can learn to love that thing. And that's sort of what happened with real estate with me. I was like 7 or 8 years in, and so this is like, I'm 27 years old, never made more than $50,000 in a year, and mentally I quit. I went and got hired for a regular sales job somewhere and was like, I can't do this. My pay is up and down. I can't like be successful like I want to be in this business. And I took this job, and after one of the trainings, I realized I was quitting, and that really pissed me off because I knew I was skillful at the job. I knew the contracts and I knew how to protect my clients better than so many other agents. So we talk about like looking at someone else successful and being happy for them, right? It was a weird thing because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin yet at that time in my life, but I would see agents who were really successful financially and know they don't even know what they're doing.
Right.
They're not taking care of their clients. They're bad agents. I'm a good agent and I'm not financially successful. So I realized I was quitting. It's something I'm good at. And literally I made a U-turn on Union Road and went back to the place that hired me and said, I can't do this right now. I haven't been giving like the full effort to figure out, okay, I'm skilled at this, but how do I become financially successful at it? And so that's something I think when it comes to success, there's two avenues that when people think of success, they either think of like money flowing in or they think of someone being like highly skilled, right? Someone who's the best at what they do. And those two things are not always the same thing. I think it's really good to look at both avenues and try to implement both. But I started looking at like, well, what are the people who are making way more money? What are they doing?
Right.
And instead of being mad that somebody has like a really expensive listing or high net worth clients and they're a bad agent, instead of being mad at them because they suck at their job, which some of them really do, instead I just looked at, well, what are they doing to get those people, and not be, bitter about it and be happy for them. Like, well, that's amazing. Like they're making $700,000 a year because they're doing X really well. I need to start doing that too. And so once I had this mindset shift, the next year my business doubled and I made close to $100,000 that year. And from there, it's just been a whole different ride. So I've been doing this for 17 years now. So it was a long ride to get to where we were, and it was a lot of struggle halfway through. But now, I don't know. Did I even answer your question?
Yeah,
but so
100%.
Here we are now. We have a small team, and everything I just talked about is what I think our team represents, because I know every person on our team, if they represent a client, I know they're always going to put their client's best interest first. And to me, that's more important than anything. That's more important than a commission check. You can't be on our team if you put a commission in front of doing what's right for your client. And sometimes what's right for your client means you're not getting paid at all. And that, I know a lot of people in this business, like they don't think that way.
Yeah. I think in my world, it is frustrating when I see like a video put out for a client who I know I'd be like, oh. My biggest pet peeve is like when I see a horizontal video posted on a vertical timeline, I'm like, that agency doesn't have that person's best interest in mind. They should really ask, where are we putting this? Because that's it, and what's the strategy behind it? But and I used to get upset too. But I'm like, you know what? If they landed that client, they might not be as good at me as like strategy and video.
Yes.
But they're better than me at either networking or marketing.
Yes.
So that's what I have to learn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think sometimes too, once you get those clients, it's really important to do right by them. So then the word spreads. Like I've done reshoots where like I've had people in like mastermind groups that I'm part of, but you should have recharged them for that. I'm like, they didn't feel comfortable on camera. Yeah. And I want to come out. I've done one where I come out the next morning and we did a whole reshoot. I'm not going to charge you for that. Like, could I? Should I? Yes, but I'm not. For me, it's not about. I mean, money's nice, and I think if everybody's motivated by money to some extent, but for me, it's like I want to be able to help people, and that's what I enjoy.
You stand by your work. If you were hired to do something and the client wasn't happy with it, like you're like me. You take responsibility. Like, well, is it that the client's being a pain in the ass, or did I not understand fully what they were asking for, and it's my fault, and I need to be a better listener. Like
I don't want we make a video and it's gonna be on your website for a long time. I don't want you to hate it. I want you to like want to show people it. And if it same thing with the home, you don't want someone to buy a house and hate walking in every day.
So I think that those are really important things to recognize about.
We, a lot of my career, because I got licensed so early, was first-time home buyers. You know, I was 20 years old when I got licensed. Not a lot of 20-year-olds buy houses, and I certainly didn't have the confidence at 20 years old with no experience to like have a 40-year-old client that's buying a $500,000 house. So first-time buyers, and to this day, that's really one of my favorite types of people to help, because I really enjoy the process of it and the education of it. And one thing we always try to educate our first-time buyers on is resale. Like, I'm not going to tell you don't buy a house, usually. But like, let's say you don't need 3 bedrooms because you don't have kids. You don't need a basement because you don't have that much stuff. So you want to buy a 2-bedroom, no basement house. That's fine. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm definitely going to make you think, like, you have a girlfriend. Okay, do you plan on having kids? What happens if she moves in and you have kids? Are you going to have enough room? No. What are you going to do then? Well, we'll just move again. Okay, what if the market shifts? Is a 2-bedroom, no basement house going to be good for resale? It's not going to be great for resale. If you can afford a 3-bedroom with a basement house, that's a better investment in the future.
Yep.
And if the market does shift, maybe you can live in that house longer and you don't have to move in a couple of years. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I think it's so important to make you think about, is this a good investment for me? And only you can answer that.
Yeah.
But those are the types of conversation. I don't care if it costs me a sale. That's what's right for them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when we just bought our first house recently, six months ago, and when I was looking at it, the house we got, we only have 1 bathroom.
who's your agent?
Johnny.
Thank you. That's right, Johnny.
And it's because with Johnny, we were doing video together, and the way he was explaining things to the camera, he started making me understand things. And I've talked to other agents in the past who, started the process, and it just either the information didn't seem right or it was completely wrong after talking to Johnny. And but yeah, when we were looking at houses, like the one we found, I'm like, it only has 1 bathroom, and I'm like, do we have room to put a second one in it?
Yes.
My wife's like, we don't want a second one. I'm like, but listen,
Yeah.
if we even have a half bathroom, it's a cape. So if we have a half bath upstairs, it will sell so much easier. I mean, the house is probably going to sell anyways. It's because it's pretty competitive now, but like we have to think about these things.
Absolutely.
Because yeah, I mean, plus it would be nice to have a second bathroom upstairs, not to walk downstairs. But,
Yeah, man. And like you said, is there room to do it? Like that right there is just the type of thinking that some people don't know to think like that. And I think it's the agent's job to educate them to think about all possible scenarios.
Yeah, and I think Johnny specifically did such a good job of really thinking about like getting to know us, and he wouldn't be afraid to say we walk in the house. He's like, this house sucks.
Yeah.
But he's like, this house sucks for you.
Yeah.
I remember once I opened the door, he was already there, and I hear, this house fucking sucks. I'm like, what? He's like, for you. This will be great for someone else. And I was like, this is who I need to work with. Because I don't want someone who's like, every house I
he's
look at
looking out
is,
for you.
let's sell you this house, let's sell you this house. But then he would also like, even if he knew there was a listing we weren't going to want, he's like, let's go look at it. Because I think there's still some things that going forward you'll be able to keep an eye out for and stuff like that.
I think house hunting, I always compare it to dating, because like you, especially like if I'm showing houses to a single female buying her first home, honestly, they'll be in love with the house before we get there, and I'm like, okay, you saw a profile picture and the guy's really good looking and you think he has a good job, but let's see how he is first. Like you might sit down with him and think he kind of sucks. He doesn't know how to have a conversation, and it's a weird thing because people will think they're gonna fall in love with a house before they get there. It's exactly like dating, and then there's like this. They're trying to make it work. Like, well, but maybe I don't need a dining room anymore, or maybe I can get by with 2 bedrooms. Maybe I don't want to have kids, and this could be the perfect house. Like, or you need to like listen to yourself and realize he's not that into you, and you're not that into him, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But the same thing, if you fall, I always feel uncomfortable if someone falls in love with the first house, right? You fall in love on the first date, like, let's go on a couple more dates.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have no reference. So even if I tell people the same thing, like, I don't want you to think you're wasting our time. I want you to see as many houses as possible so you have reference to compare.
Right.
Because then on the flip side, obviously you don't want to settle. But on the flip side, you might be unrealistic too. And maybe you need to realize, well, I guess in my price range, I can't have an indoor pool and a helicopter pad on the roof. Maybe, but only for going through a few houses might you realize that.
Yeah.
So you need to get in as many doors as you can.
Yeah, and often, like I definitely did the, and you're fine. I definitely did the, maybe we can make this work. Oh, the crack in the basement's not that bad.
Yeah.
I would Google like, how bad is this crack in the foundation? I shouldn't even, think about that kind of stuff. But you definitely, I think part of it too is when it is competitive, and maybe you start looking at a few, you start trying to, okay, I can live with that. But I think it's really good to have someone, like yourself or like a Johnny who can, like, I know where you're at right now in your mentality, where you kind of you want to just get a house right now. But if we just keep looking a little bit, one will work out. Like the one we ended up getting, me and Johnny walked in. We walked around really quickly. We sat in the kitchen and I'm going to make an offer. My wife didn't even get a chance to look at it because she was at work, and offers are due like at the end of the week. And I was like, let's just throw everything we have at it. Like, I know I was approved up to this amount. I can afford this a monthly. I don't even want to like try to undercut and save $5-10 grand here.
Yeah.
Let's throw it. And we got it, which is awesome. But my wife didn't get to see it till closing day, which I was stressful. But luckily she liked it. But yeah.
You mentioned like you were putting in offers and then losing. One of the things we'll always tell, especially first-time home buyers, like if you're putting in offers and losing, when it gets to the point where you want to put an offer in, sometimes people keep losing offers. Then they just want to win, and it clouds their judgment of, is this even the right house for you? They just want to win because they keep losing. I had a situation with a client once that it checked a lot of boxes, but I'll always ask the question, because if you don't know if you're going to have a second shot at an offer. So I'll ask, okay, if I call you, tell you didn't get it, are you going to be pissed? And if the answer is yes, I'm going to be pissed, like, well, then maybe we should adjust our offer. I don't want you to be like, I knew I should have offered more. Like, we might only get one shot. On the flip side, if I call you and tell you, congratulations, you got the house, how are you going to feel? And sometimes I could hear the hesitation, like, I mean, I guess we'll be happy. Like I don't know. Do you really want this house, or you're just sick of losing and you think you can win this one? Like, we don't have to offer on it. Yeah. So that's another thing that clouds people's judgments because it's been so competitive.
Yeah. Sometimes the process, like I always say, like sometimes it sucks. Like it can really wear you down, but it's so important to have someone who makes it as enjoyable as it can be, and you're learning something throughout the process. So you like, it can suck, but at the end of it, it is worth it. And it sounds so cliche, like sometimes it takes a long time for a reason. And when we look back, me and my wife have talked about it. We only looked at like 10 houses, put 3 offers. So it was great. We got really lucky. But I'm like, you know what? As much as we liked all those ones we lost, I still like ours more. And it weirdly works out like that.
17 years. I've never had it work out where somebody really had regret. Like the house that they lost that they thought was never going to be replaceable, the one that they got was always better. That's I'm not kidding. My entire career, I've never seen it work out that way where somebody like really screwed themselves and regretted that. At the time they regret not getting that house, but the one that they end up with, it always works its way out.
Yeah, there's always like some, oh man, that I would have liked that house because it was bigger. Like I liked one feature of that, or we really missed that, but overall it's usually ended up a better situation. But so after you've been doing it for 17 years, why do you still do it? Like what's the motivation to keep going?
Because life's expensive. You need to, but my focus now is really different with having a team. I don't have the same goals that I used to. Like, so my goals now are more team oriented. I got to the point where my business is almost all referral business. I like over 90% all referral. It's not paid for leads or anything like that. So because of that, I try to focus a lot of my effort and lead generation to build up leads for the team. Like I don't have a personal goal this year. It's a team goal. How many sales you want to do. So it's just sort of, I don't feel like I'm doing the same thing for 17 years. Like it's constantly evolved. And once you add other people's livelihood into it, I really don't feel like I'm doing the same thing. So it's just sort of, I don't feel like I'm doing the same thing for 17 years. Like it's constantly evolved. And once you once you add other people's livelihood into it, you know, it's constantly evolved. And once you add other people's livelihood into it, you know, that just changes things. So now what we're really focused on is changing the systems that are in place so that the success that I have, that the members on our team could get the same success way faster than I could, because I didn't have the systems in place when I was just grinding for so many years, you know?
Yeah, I think having something where there's your motivation switches like I said, it feels like a whole new business sometimes. Like even for me, recently niching into working only with real estate agents, I feel like I just started a whole new business, and it's like fun because now I'm not like, you know, doing the same thing in and out. It's like, oh, I can focus on something and I have a whole new motivation for it.
And it goes back to what I said about that, having that weight on your shoulders of like, I got a client recently who, she bought a house with her boyfriend. Maybe her boyfriend just bought it or whatever, but she went through the process and they're breaking up, and now she's still living in the house and she needs to find a house. She's not in a good situation. And like, that's the sort of thing, like I live for that. I live for situations like that. Like she needs help. And I truly believe that our team is, let me rephrase that. I truly believe that nobody will help her the same way our team will help her. I really believe that. I don't believe anyone will care about her and her best interests. Like, you know, especially a situation like that. Listen, like you mentioned before, a basement crack. Everything can be fixed in a house. But this is a single girl who, you know, it's all on her. And nothing against, I'm not saying because she's a girl like she's incapable, but this is a single income. Life is really expensive right now. So in owning a house, which is, I think, the best thing in the world, and it is the pathway to wealth, but it's not cheap. And when there's a problem, like if you have a roof that's going to need to be replaced in a couple of years, like that's a big expense. That's on you to fix.
Right.
So something like that, like people are stretching their budgets right now, and some people don't have any extra money in the bank after they buy the house, and that's something that conversations like that need to be had. Like, what happens if the furnace goes tomorrow?
Yeah.
Do you have the money to fix it? So I just genuinely care so much about this girl, and I know like that's the mentality of our whole team. So about going back to why do I still do it? Like, even if I didn't want to do it, even if I said I don't want to fucking sell house anymore, if I get a phone call like that and someone needs help, and I know that we can help them better than anybody else, like I'm all in, man.
Yeah. I still get
Keep hitting the desk. I'm sorry.
It's fine. I still get like I've kind of niched into real estate, but if someone calls me and says, "Hey, I need your help," especially if someone I worked with in the past, like I know you don't do this anymore, but can you help me? Or even like I used to do photography or I do graphic design, I will help them because I'm like I know that no one else is going to help you for what your situation is.
Right.
You maybe don't have the budget for it, but I enjoy it, so I can definitely help you. And I think it's really important to think, like you said, okay, we can get you a house, but I want to make sure it's a house you can sustain for a little bit of time and not be like, oh shit, now I'm in such a worse spot than I might have been before.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things about real estate, I guess it's parallel in almost all businesses, but because of the TV shows about real estate, people think real estate's about houses. Being successful in real estate is very little to do with houses. It's the people business. It's about representing people and taking care of them. It's about building relationships with people and knowing how to look out for them. Like that's what the business is. Like the house is a byproduct. It's not like the main product at all. It's the people that you represent. And that's, I think, people who get the real estate license, they don't quite understand that.
Yeah, it's something that it's hard to teach until you do it a lot and learn what makes a good agent and what makes a bad agent. And actually, on a note, so I've started doing a thing where my previous guests tease up a question for my next guest. Last one was Sean. He I thought it was maybe a more funny question, but he thought it'd be interesting to hear everybody's opinion on what makes a good agent.
Looking out for your client's best interest and knowing what the fuck you're doing. I mentioned before, there's some really financially successful agents that don't know what they're doing. I'll give you an example of that.
Name names, please.
I mean, start to finish, it's about a 60-day process. Our contracts with all the addendums and everything in there are like 24 pages or something like that. So many agents have their clients sign these contracts and they don't know what's in them and they don't understand it. And it becomes really apparent when you do know that stuff and you're doing a deal with them and the questions they're asking you and what they're getting upset about. And you realize they don't know what they're doing. And I've seen things like, if you sign a contract, it's my responsibility to explain to you what's in it.
Right.
And it's my responsibility to protect you. Here's an example. Let's say you're buying a house. Okay, I don't know if this is going to be able to come across audibly very well, but we'll try. Let's say you're buying a house, okay, and it's contingent on the sale of your house, okay? Mm-hmm. So you get your offer accepted, and that deal is kind of on pause until your house is sold. So then put your house up for sale. See, even just doing a contingency, though, because there's been so few contingent offers in the past, 8 years because of the seller's market we've seen. There's so many agents who are top producing agents financially, but they've never even experienced, they don't even know how to help someone through a contingency.
Right.
So your contingent offer is accepted, contingent on the sale of your house. We put your house up for sale, your house is sold. And then we're going to line those up so you can close on your house, take that money, buy your next house, and everything works out fine. So what happens if your house is sold and then the deal dies? Well, you're not obligated to buy the house that you're buying. That's good, right? Mm-hmm. Here's a scenario that almost no one thinks about because they've never been in that situation. What happens if sales are going along and the house you're buying falls apart? And people are like, well, how could that happen? Like, you're already approved or whatever. Well, maybe there's a title issue on this house. Maybe there's a tax lien that no one realized and it's getting foreclosed and they can't sell it to you. Maybe this has really happened. Maybe the seller dies.
Wow.
And now that's going through the estate and you can't buy it. What's happening with your sale? You're going to have to sell your house and you're going to be homeless because you no longer have a house to buy. So like in a situation like that, we always talk to our clients and their attorneys about putting a reverse closing contingency in place to state, okay, this house is contingent on the closing of this house. So if something happens here, you might not be obligated to sell your house and you won't be homeless. That's the type of nuance that people just don't think about that stuff. And it's not, some of it is just from lack of experience and just being in a market where that stuff didn't exist, but thinking about all the possible scenarios. And there's an example, like I said, sometimes what's best for your client means no commission. There's an example where 2 deals might die and you don't get paid on it, but is it the right thing for the client? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So being able to have contracts as bulletproof as possible, being able to educate the client on all the possible scenarios so that you have their best interest at heart. That's what makes a good agent. Sales skills can help you become a successful agent to convince someone that you should work with me. Mm-hmm. But does that make you a good agent? Does that make you good at your job? No.
Right. Yeah, I think kind of, what I took from that is like setting expectations also is so important. When like, if you're able to set expectations of like, here's what could happen, here's what usually happens.
Yeah.
But if you do that, if something like that does happen, you're not, you're kind of safe a little bit. Like, hey, you're not blindsiding anybody. I think it's really important to like be realistic with people and say, hey, this could happen. I've never really seen it happen, but just so you know, here's how, if it happens, what we do. And just instilling confidence in that buyer or seller. Like I have a plan for it.
I asked an agent about that specific scenario once because I had an attorney fighting me saying, we don't need to put that on the contract. Their purchase is already gone on. We're not putting that in there. And so now I'm in a situation like I'm telling my client, this is what you should do. Her attorney's telling her, don't do that. Guess what? It just happened. Her sale, her purchase, dead. Her sale went through. And I talked to an agent about that and said, what would you do in a situation like that? Would you put what I would do, like a reverse closing contingency, making sure that they're not homeless? And they're like, no. And I'm like, why not? And they're like, well, they're just going to have to rent temporarily then. I'm like, do they know that? Like that's fine, but do they know that there's a possible scenario that if their purchase falls through, they're not protected, and they're gonna probably still have to sell their home and have nowhere to live? Did you tell them that? No. So, are you looking out for their best interest, or are you just trying to make sure the sale goes through?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine being told like, oh, you got to go to a hotel for 3 weeks with her, a month.
And then we're gonna
with
have to
your- for
find a
60
new
days.
house now.
Man. Yeah. I can't imagine what that's like. So yeah, I totally agree. A good agent and a successful agent are completely different things. A lot of times they can match up. You can be a good, successful agent, and that's like the ideal.
Right. I think it's important for people to recognize, though, that those are two different things, and you really should try and aspire to be both. But that's my biggest pet peeve in this whole business, though, is like if you watch Instagram reels about real estate, if you go pay money to go to a seminar, if you hire a real estate coach, they're all talking about financial success. It's all about leads, it's all about lead generation, it's all about closing, right? Nobody is explaining to people what happens when your seller calls you and says, hey, I don't think I want to sell anymore. What do I do in that situation? Yeah. What happens like the situation we just talked about? What happens when you're in a house that you know your buyer's getting cold feet after the home inspection and they really don't want to move forward, but you're not going to get paid unless they do move forward? What do you do in that scenario? None of those seminars talk about that. None of them talk about the nuances of our contracts. You wouldn't believe how many agents don't understand the timeline of our contract. And I won't get into the weeds with that, but it's sad. It's really sad that people have their clients sign these contracts for, in most cases, the largest sum of money that they're ever going to deal with in one transaction, and they are they're improperly advising their client because they don't even understand what they're having people sign. No real estate seminar teaches you any of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's one thing I focus on, just kind of switching to like the marketing of things. Like so many agents are just posting this home sold for X amount over in 2 weeks. This is a new listing. This sold. This is listing. There's no real value there to anybody potentially. I mean, we can see that you are successful, but I don't know if you're good. So I always tell people, one of my biggest pet peeves, and if you've done this, I'm sorry, is when someone posts like, let us be a resource, reach out for any questions. I said, just answer the damn questions. Just start posting the things that are going to end. Like, people sometimes don't want to reach out because they don't want to be sold to, or they don't even know what questions to ask. I wouldn't know to ask about those, but if you made like here's something that almost never happened, but it's something that can happen in your real estate transaction, and here's how to fix that, or here's things to watch out for, or here are things to ask your agent. And I think sometimes you don't always see a return one-to-one on putting those things out there, but overall it just builds your brand of people like they're successful, but they're also a good agent because they're helping me without even any money exchange or contract signed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what, I guess on that note, in terms of like marketing, what have you seen work and maybe not work when it comes to like real estate? Is there anything that stands out to you like that's a waste of money or energy? Or
I think so as far as marketing, you could see like our calendars, our bill schedules there. I just think people put way too much thought into everything. Like I said, you go to a real estate seminar, it's about generating income, fast income, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to real estate, there's so many realtors, and the most successful agent, their business is still referral business. So I think what's important with marketing is you need to want to be omnipresent. You need to want to be, if someone thinks of real estate, they think of me. And if someone thinks of me, they think of real estate. You need to want to do that. How you do it, I don't think really matters that much. And people put way too much. People think like, all right, I'm going to do this amazing video and it's going to go viral. And then I'm going to have all these phone calls coming in. And like, maybe that happens. It's probably not going to happen though. So that's just a bad strategy. Sometimes people, and there's nothing wrong with trying something, but say like for a billboard, like I've had billboards before. The billboards just reinforce the same referrals that I would have got anyway. So when a past client is talking to someone, they're like, I think I want to buy my first house. And maybe they drove by the billboard and like, oh yeah, you got to call Joe. No one's stopping in the middle of the road, pulling over and like, I need to buy a house. I'm going to call that person right there. That's not happening.
Yeah.
But you need to be consistent with reminding people that you're there. And I just think people, they think they're going to get this explosion and the phone calls are going to come in, and they just have the wrong expectation. You need to constantly be telling people that you're there, because in Buffalo, I believe there's 3,800 members of the Buffalo Niagara Association of Realtors. This is a small town. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Everyone knows someone who has a real estate license. They have an aunt who has a license. They have a cousin that just got licensed. So being consistent is way more important than I think any particular type of marketing.
Yeah, I think to me that sounds like just building your brand. And it's funny with the billboards, I always kind of think of like an Instagram post, like a reel, as a billboard that comes on every day. Because it's people it comes on every day. So you have to keep putting things out. And like you said, it almost never goes viral. But I think with like a referral based business, if someone says, hey, you should go check out Joe's page, Johnny, or go work with them, the chances are I'm not going to come right to you and say, sell me a house.
Right.
I'm going to go look you up.
Right.
And if you have one viral video, cool. But if you have 50 ones that just got like 200-300 views, but they're super important, like they're actually helping me, I'm going to go, this guy is consistently helping people. He didn't just have, he's doing the right things. I'm going to go towards that person who's helping on a more consistent basis.
The year that my business doubled that first year, I read the 10X rule by Grant Cardone, and he talked about being omnipresent. And so I made the commitment. So this is back in like 2014 or something like that. So agents, so at the time, I'm one of the younger agents in the industry. I'm in my 20s. I believe the average agent at the Buffalo Niagara Association of Realtors at the time was like 60. So no one is successfully using social media. And the last several years, I'll average around 50 sales a year, and it's all referral, which that's a lot. The average nationwide is 12 sales a year. And I don't have a huge following. I have like 1,500 Instagram followers. I have a couple thousand friends on Facebook, and most of them are other realtors. So I do not have a big network. And I just made the commitment at the time, because people they would post on their business page, it's a great time to buy or sell. Give me a call, right? And like you said, nobody wants to be sold anything. So I made the conscious decision, okay, I want in 1 year people to think of real estate, they think of me, and people think of me, they think of real estate. So growing up in the business, my dad spent a lot of money on advertising. The mail outs that he would do to our neighborhood, like I spent a lot of time as a child putting labels on shit. And that costs a lot of money. And I realized a post is the same as sending out 1,000 letters, and it's free. So I started a hashtag at the time, the things I see in houses, and I would just post random stuff that I saw. And I rarely do it now, but like I committed, like I'm going to just post something like this once a week, because it's just going to remind people, hey, I'm in real estate, but I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for your business. And just that consistency, I don't think it's a coincidence. The next year, my business doubled. But now everyone does stuff like that, and I think that's great. But at that time, people were not using social media successfully. But that's where there's a misconception too of like, oh, I'm gonna do these awesome videos so I can go viral and get all these followers. You don't need all those followers. My database that, like I said, generates 50 sales a year for me is only about 500 people. And those are the people who like get the bills magnets and stuff like that. We're not putting in our efforts to put it everywhere. It's just the people who already know and trust us. And people have the wrong mindset. They'll think like, well, I'm not going to spend money on sending something to that person. They already know I'm an agent, right? They're already going to call me. Well, you can't assume that. And maybe they have a friend that needs help, and it consistently hitting those people, that's so much more important than trying to hit the masses. There's nothing wrong with trying to hit the masses, but the thing with referral business is I could stop sending anything out to people, and I'll still probably be in the top 20% of agents if I never marketed myself again. And you can't, like, that's the tough thing in this business is stability. And if you're not going to pay for ads, how do you do that? But it's just putting the work in of helping those same people and doing a good job that snowballs, and you can't even stop it. That's actually another thing that, like what I was saying before, how it makes me mad that nobody focuses on being a good agent. Doing a really good job by someone, though, like, no one also talks about in these seminars, like, yeah, okay, you could put all that effort in and help someone buy their first home and it's only $100,000 sale. 5-10 years later, they might call you again. They might, you help a kid buy their first house and you do right by them. Their parents see that. Maybe their parents are going to call you, or their grandparents are going to call you. Doing a really good job, I feel like that pays dividends in the long run. Like, the universe rewards you for that, but also just people recognize the effort that you put in. And that's something, again, people don't talk about that because it's not fast money, but it pays dividends in the long run by doing a good job.
Yeah, I think kind of almost going back to what we were talking about with the Bills is you just got to be there when at the end of the game when people are ready to buy. And it's really hard to have that consistency maybe when you aren't as successful, or you don't have, like, I think everybody has the time to make, especially when it comes to social media, you can always do something. Now, if you're a high-end brand and you want your brand to look a certain way, then money starts to have to be spent. But sometimes it's hard to kind of just do the work without seeing the benefit.
Absolutely.
When all these other shiny objects are coming around and other seminars are coming out, and this person said, oh, you should start sending out random unsolicited CMAs to people. It's like, well, just get really good at one or two things, get very good at them, and then bring in the third thing. And everybody's just trying to switch and jump and look for that quick option.
Consistency with all those things is the most important thing. You have to be consistent. And like you said, just sticking around, not quitting. Most people are going to quit. Most agents, statistically, 87% of agents fail within the first 5 years. I failed within the first 5 years, but I just didn't leave. And so my best year at that point, when I finally, like, felt comfortable with the money I was making, I had never sold more than like 15 to 18 houses in a year. Actually, probably it was probably like, I think 16 houses in 1 year was the most I did. So that 1 year that catapulted me, I sold, I think 24 homes, which the reason that happened, though, 6 people who I sold their first house called me and said, okay, I want to buy my next house. So I got to list their house and sell them. So I got 12 sales from people that I had sold them houses years ago. There's nothing in the world that could have got me those sales except just sticking around. And, waiting years to be successful is not like the best avenue. But again, if you do a good job, though, it pays dividends later. And just not quitting was really the one thing that helped me more than anything. And I learned a lot along the way, but never quitting, it paid off in the long run. And like I said, I mentally quit. And that was 1 year prior to that. That's like the story of digging for gold and quitting 3 feet short of it. Like, it was right there. My whole life changed that next year. And if I would have went through with quitting, I would never have known that. But you just can't quit.
And not quitting. And if you wouldn't have maybe been super successful, but also you wouldn't have helped as many people as you helped. And now you would have went to those agents, you're like, I don't like them. They're doing a bad job.
It's funny too. I believe ego is a real problem. But that was the one time in my life my ego saved me, because it was my ego that wouldn't let me quit. Especially my last name. My father's been an agent since 1991, and I got licensed and he was successful. So the idea, like, if I didn't make it, I just thought everyone's going to look at me like I'm a loser. And I was too stubborn to let that happen. So there's the one time in my life ego really paid off. And I just can't imagine had I had I quit that day, what would have happened, but I just couldn't do it. I have like two God-given talents. One is 20/20 vision. My wife keeps thinking I need to see the eye doctor, but anytime she goes on her appointment, like I can see that bottom line, no problem. 20/20 vision, that's a talent, right? Can't teach that. The other talent is the ability to get along with others. That's just the only talent I have ever had, and I didn't know it until my mom tells me the story. I was in kindergarten, or no, I was in second grade, and I came home and told her that Mrs. Moxon moved my seat to the front of the class. I sit at her desk now. And she's like, why? What the hell? So she calls the teacher and was like, Nancy, why is Joey sitting in the front of the class? Like, if there was a problem, why wouldn't you just move his seat? And she's like, Norina, because I've moved this kid next to every single person in the class, and he won't stop talking to them.
Funny.
So I didn't obviously remember that, but it's just funny at an early age. Like, I just really get along with people.
And that's important.
It's my only talent, though.
That talent can transfer to everything. Because we only have a few more minutes, I'd feel dumb if I didn't talk about pizza real quick. It's my favorite food. Had it on my wedding. That was our food of choice.
So you're from Rochester.
Yeah. So I was going to
Are
ask,
you a
have you
Guida's fan?
I'm a Mark's guy. Have you ever had Mark's?
I don't think so.
Oh man, Mark's Pizzeria is they have one in Lockport. That's like the closest. So whenever we go
really?
out there, my wife doesn't like it. They put, maybe it's because I had it growing up. I think that's really what it was. But they put like too much flour on the bottom of the crust, and I love that. It's like
Mark's in Lockport?
Mark's Pizzeria. They treat you like a family.
Ooh.
But you might not like it, but it's my favorite pizza.
So I've been dying to try Guida's. What do we
I don't think I've been to that. In Rochester, when I was out there, it was like Pontillo's. There's a Salvatore's. It's not the same one. We had Salvatore's at our wedding. Not the one that's in Buffalo, which I love their pizza too. But yeah, I just figured I would ask if you had Mark's. It's my favorite. Highly recommend it.
I can't wait to try it now.
Yeah, well, if it's bad, I didn't tell you that. But thank you so much for letting me come and just like tear apart your office and
It's my pleasure.
letting me pick your brain and selfishly learn a little bit about you. And my goal was like, I want to learn as much as I can. So the people I help, I am focused on it, and I'm not spread across all these different businesses. I want to be able to make sure that whatever I'm putting out or offering to people is going to make sense. Because sometimes I'll think of an idea, I'm like, that makes sense, and they're like, no, that would never work in our business. So the last thing I did, like I had for Sean, I'm gonna let you tee up a question for my next guest. I don't know who it is, so any question, it can be business related or personal.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
We're in our cars a lot as a realtor. Where's your go-to lunch spot to eat in your car alone? That's what I want to know.
Great. Awesome.
That's why I eat pizza all the time, because it's the easiest thing to eat on the go. Because you just go in, grab a slice, and go. Like even with fast food, you don't know. You might get stuck in a line forever. So eating pizza in the middle of the day, alone in my car, listening to a podcast, might be my favorite pastime.
Cool. Great. Definitely, Pat, I can't wait to ask that one. But Joe, thank you again so much.
Thanks for having me, man.